Hi, and welcome to FlowerHire's Sunset Sessions. I am Aisha Alves, Client Services Manager on the East Coast. And today I'm very happy to introduce you to my good friend and colleague, Mr. Seibo Shen.
Hey everyone, nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, FlowerHire does sunset sessions as an opportunity to invite thought leaders and forward-thinking colleagues in the space to get together and share their ideas about what's happening in the industry and what's next on the horizon for all of us. Today, it's especially a great opportunity for us to be together because, as you know, we are celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month this May, and wanted to take this opportunity to really, use that platform to lift up and celebrate those of us in the field who are doing all this hard work. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here and really excited to engage and co-create this session with you today.
Me too. So let me give you the proper introduction that you deserve. This is Mr. Seibo Shen, who is Chief Innovation Officer at Form Vape Technologies and also an Executive Transformation Coach. Now, Seibo, you and I met for the first time last year and in Las Vegas at MJ BizCon. And I don't remember if it was at a networking event or something else, but I feel like we introduced each other and immediately we clicked because I felt like we had this shared zeal, right, for building community in the cannabis space, particularly among AAPI professionals.
Yeah, it was actually at the Meadow Brunch, and I remember someone said, "You have to meet this person." I went up, and then you were so excited to invite me to the happy hour, and I felt like there was an immediate connection there. So I'm glad that we were able to keep our relationship going, and here we are filming a podcast together. How awesome is
I
that?
know that. Look, networking works no matter what anyone says. That's what this is all for. So yes, I'm equally happy. And you know, we'll talk about a little bit more about the AIPI work later in the session. But first of all, I did want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about the work you're doing now. What is Form Vape Technologies and what is the work that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. Form Vape Technologies is a brand new hardware company. We're focused on creating the world's best all-in-ones. The parent company of Form Vape is actually over 100 years old. It's a company called Central Bag and Burlap. And in 2010, they started doing cannabis packaging. And then last year, they decided to really start a hardware line. They had been brokering a lot of hardware deals, and they were looking for someone that could help them design the next generation of vape hardware, and they just stumbled upon me. There was an immediate connection and fit, just like when we met each other. There was an alignment in the energy, and the same thing with Flower Vape, which was, or not Flower Vape, with Form Vape. I'm combining our companies together
I
into
know.
one company.
Oh,
But
don't
what
predict a merger.
yeah. But when I met the founders of the company, we immediately clicked, and it just felt right to come back to the cannabis industry after 3 years of being away.
So, Chief Innovation Officer, I think is always a very coveted title. And I imagine that in this role, you have the ability to get really creative and, try new things as you're exploring new product ideas. So for you, what's your philosophy when it comes to, cool design? Is it form versus function? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I love that question. And I even love the way that you framed it, form versus function. And I've never been a this or that type of guy. I've always been a this and that type of guy. So I think of it as form and function. And we really want to make the the most kind of exquisite, sophisticated industrial design devices. But obviously, if they don't work well, it's just a really pretty device that doesn't work well. So we really want to combine both of the facets of both form and function together so that not only do you have a really cool looking device, but you have one that allows you to have the best user experience possible. And when I talk about the best user experience, I'm talking about like the harshness of the vapor, the preservation of the terpenes, and just the overall, like not just the um, look of the product, but even how like the product feels in your hand, and really wanting to take a more holistic approach to vape hardware and not just produce things that we believe that, just function well, but ones that really fit into the lifestyle of the end customer in a way that is very seamless with the way that they are currently living.
I'm going to hit you with a surprise question. Is there anything that you're working on now that you're really excited about, or something that you feel is kind of like your pet project that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. We are working on a new product that we are going to launch in the first week of June. It is based off of a design that I saw in the lobby of a spa that both my wife went to get a couple's massage, and it was really influenced by these river rocks that I had saw, and it was like a river rock waterfall. And I remember picking up one of these stones, and it just had this really great hand feel. And I have a few like palm stones like in my office right now. And I've always loved like how palm stones and worry stones felt. So that really influenced the design of this upcoming product. And I'll be so happy to share it once we have samples of it in our office.
I am looking forward to that. And of course, I don't want you to, disclose anything you're not allowed to yet, but I love the idea of it being kind of this organic and, very tactile experience. So it's very, very cool. So one thing that I noticed when you were mentioning your work with Form Vape is that you had taken a 3-year hiatus and come back. This I did not know about.
Yeah, so I started my first cannabis company. I was the head of it. It was a company called Vape Exhale, and we were making really high-end dab rigs in the 600 to $700 range. And from 2013 to 2020, we were pushing that product. And after 7.5 years of running the company, I just let the pressures of the cannabis industry get to me. We went from high-end devices like the Volcano and the Vape XL Evo, and I could start seeing that the user base or the customer base was wanting things a bit more easy and convenient. So we started shifting our strategy from really high-end devices to more convenient devices. And through that time, we had different things like VapeGate, challenges with investors, challenges internally, challenges with just payment processors. And over the course of the 7.5 years of running the company, it just took a tremendous toll on my family. I know for my wife, when she would see me being interviewed, she would always hear me saying things like, I'm doing this for the family, like I really want to have like a legacy for my family. But she would say, you're never around, like I hear you saying these things, but you're never around your family. And when COVID happened and we started to have to shelter ourselves, and during oh man, it almost seems like a
Oh my
different world
God.
even thinking about it. But I had a lot more time to spend with my family, and I started realizing that there were more important things than just my entrepreneurial dreams. And I wanted to really align like the story that I was telling the world and the story that I was telling myself. And I could see that they were misaligned. And I actually went through a fairly deep depression because of realizing that what was coming out of my mouth was not the way that I was living. And during that time, our company was actually doing quite well. And I just had a transcendent experience with some plant medicines, and it really gave me insight that I needed to change the way that I was operating. And I ended up stepping down from running the company so that I could focus on myself and my family.
You brought something up that I think is really interesting, which is like sometimes there is a conflict with the walk that you're walking and the talk that you're talking. And I feel like for high achieving professionals, especially in an industry like cannabis, where people are by nature, very ambitious and very purpose driven, that's something that I think is a very brave statement to make. I think a lot of people don't want to admit that there is misalignment between, what they say they're about and what they're actually doing in their actual lives. In your work as an executive transformation coach, what are some of the methods that you use to support professionals who are going through that?
Yeah, the methods that I used were similar to the methods that I went through myself. When I went through my depression, I hired therapists, I hired coaches, I went on plant medicine retreats, I did everything. But for me, the number one thing that has really helped myself as well as my clients is really understanding the fundamental nature of how we experience reality and how our belief systems basically filter a objective experience into a subjective experience. And what I realized was my belief systems were it was very hard to make money in the cannabis industry. There's a bunch of people in the cannabis industry that are not passionate about the plants. Everyone is out to get us. So obviously, if you have belief systems like that, the way that you experience the experience of creating a industry from the ground floor up, instead of it feeling like a challenge that is producing positive results, it feels like it's just problem after problem after problem. So helping myself and helping my clients understand that there is no objective reality. All of reality is actually created by the thoughts that you have. And the general framework is thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, actions lead to results. So positive thoughts, positive feelings, positive actions, positive results. Negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative actions, negative results. And when I talk about results, I'm not just talking about professional results or like higher revenue. I'm talking about holistically, because I hit so many of the metrics from a revenue perspective that should make me happy. But what I realized was because a lot of the goals that I set were not goals based on what I really wanted, but it was based on proving other people wrong. Like I remember as a senior in high school, I told my college counselor or high school counselor that I wanted to be a CEO. And she said, Seibo, there's not a lot of Asian CEOs. Maybe you could be a CTO or CIO or CFO, but CEOs, that's not for people like you. So in my mind, I was like, I'm going to show her, I'm going to prove her wrong. And what I realized was when I became a CEO and found some success, that wasn't my goal to be a CEO. It was wanting to prove her wrong. And so when you start understanding that a lot of the goals that you have were not the goals that are in alignment with what you truly want, it's usually to prove someone wrong. Maybe you didn't go to the prom, or maybe you got bullied, or maybe you had a high school counselor tell you you couldn't do something. So a lot of the times when I work with my clients, I ask them, why are you so passionate about what you're doing? And then we go through the 7 layers of why, why are you doing this? They'll give me an answer and I say, well, why are you doing that? And then we just keep going deeper and deeper. And always the answer is something happened, something traumatic happened when I was younger that made me feel this way, made me have these beliefs. And once I had these beliefs, it was up to me to try and prove people wrong. And what I came to realize is that that is a very good fuel to get things done, but it's a toxic fuel because when you achieve and accomplish these goals that aren't your goals, you have like a momentary burst of dopamine and serotonin, but it dissipates quite quickly. And then it's off to the next goal, off to the next goal. And it's very much like, chasing the dragon, chasing the high, except society rewards you for it. So you feel like you're doing the right
I'm
thing. You feel
winning.
like, yes, yes, yes. And what I have come to learn is typically, or not just typically, I would say there's like 99% positive correlation. The higher the ambition, the greater the trauma. Why else would you be willing to give up 70, 80 hours of your week in order to do these things? It's because there is this hole in you that you feel like you need to, or let me use I language. I felt like there was a hole in me that I could fulfill by becoming a super successful CEO. And so that's the framework that I typically use is helping people understand, why do I operate the way that I do? And that it is my thinking that is producing my subjective experience of consciousness as I navigate this 3D physical reality.
Well, there's so many things I want to ask you about this now. And I feel like I also don't want to uncover too much based on how personal this journey must be for everyone who talks to you. The first thing that comes to my mind is when I hear you talk about, the pressures and that desire to always achieve and achieve. Do you have a lot of founders who come to you for help? I feel like this is very much like founder language.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of my clients I classify them as professional overachievers. So either founders or executives, a lot of executives that have golden handcuffs, meaning they work at Facebook, Amazon, one of the FANG companies, and they know that they want to do something different, but the lifestyle that they have achieved it's hard for them to imagine, oh, if I really did what I loved, I could maintain this lifestyle. So a lot of what I try to help them with is how to improve their quality of life without sacrificing their standard of living. And that goes back to the belief systems of if you don't believe that you could have high quality of life and high standard of living, and most people that come to me think it's quite binary. It's either one or the other. Like I could have a great quality of life, but maybe I can't have the big house, the nice car, or I could have the big house and nice car, but it's going to come at the expense of my personal life. Like if you have that belief system, it's really hard to create and manifest the life that you want. So a lot of what I try to do is really open up people's belief systems to understand that, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that. And once you truly believe that, then I try to help people realize that the answers for you to create this and that are not out there. It's not out there. It's not like you can't find it in like a podcast or in a book or in an audio book. The answer is within you. And when you understand how to go deep within yourself and find your own truth, then the next phase is just having the courage to live your own truth. And I know that a lot of the things that I talk about when I say these things around my Silicon Valley peers, like they just want to like throw up and they're like, Seibo, this is so irresponsible. You're teaching people to just live their bliss. It's so unreliable this way. And then I go, well, hey, you've been trying to control everything. How's your life working out? And they're like, it's not, so a lot of this had to be like retraining because I grew up in the Silicon Valley where, if you've grinded harder than the next person, then that would be the definition of success. And one of the things that I love about speaking with people like of the Gen Z age is like they seem to have seen like what people in my generation have done, which is sacrifice everything to attain what we have, but still not seem happy. So they seem to have like a broader view of like what their definition of success is. And it seems to be a much more holistic definition than just financial success or professional success.
I love that you brought that up because I agree. I think that the new crop of professionals that are in the workplace now from Gen Z, you're right. They do have, I think, an innate sense of balance about that, or at least better than we did. I don't want to date either of us, but we're Xennials, right?
Yep.
Millennials slash Gen X. And they do come to the table with, I think, a heightened level of awareness about that. And I think that that's good news for, what the future holds. Also, Gen Z has the best slang. I mean, our slang is just not as good as theirs. Um, okay, so when you talk about the type of professionals that you are helping through this work, what comes to mind is kind of like the overlap of the different type of people you're talking to, right? Because you've got your Silicon Valley people, which inextricably is going to overlap with the Asian American community.
Yes.
And also you're working in cannabis. So I'm assuming you're talking to a lot of people in cannabis. And that in itself means that they have already gone through kind of like a transformative moment in their own career, because all of us who are in cannabis now had some kind of transformation from what we used to do before, right? So I guess my question at this juncture is, can you tell us about your initial transformation into cannabis? How was that first pivot?
Yeah, I mean, when I first transferred or when I got into the cannabis industry, I had just gotten out of a fairly successful tech career. I worked for 5 companies. All of the companies either IPO'd or had a successful acquisition. And so when I told my family, my relatives, my friends that I was getting into the cannabis industry, they all thought I was crazy. I was very much kind of in that path of being able to run sales organizations for like tier one startups. And so to pivot into cannabis in 2013, I mean, there was no support. And this was where I needed to really trust my inner guidance of understanding what my truth was, because every mentor that I went to, every family member that I went to, no one supported me. But I knew that what I wanted to create, what I believe would be the healthiest way to consume cannabinoids, would be a game changer for people that prioritize their health, that wanted to interact with the medicine, but didn't want to combust the medicine. And it was really lonely. I mean, like the first few years, I cannot think of another Asian face that I saw at the trade shows and the networking events that I went to. And when they found out I was the CEO of the company, I met a lot of resistance similar to my high school counselor, like, oh wait, well, you designed the device. You must be the technical founder who's like who's the
behind the
sales
scenes of that.
oriented founder. Yeah, yeah. And so it was just really interesting. But when I look at it in retrospect, I realize that these were moments that gave me the greatest amount of growth, not just professionally, but personally, because I really needed to tap into who I was as a person and not let other people tell me like what my role could be in the industry. And so, in many ways, while the actual experience of it wasn't pleasant, in retrospect, I could see, wow, this was truly the moments where I had some of the greatest professional growth as well as personal growth in my life.
And what year was this? 2013?
2013.
Wow. So you've really been around longer than most of us have. And you've seen kind of like the arc of, the way that our community has really kind of risen up in the industry. And I know you mentioned, your family. Did you meet a lot of resistance from the folks in your immediate circle when you made this pivot?
Oh yeah, I mean, my father and mother, they knew that I kind of marched to the beat of my own drum, but when I told them what I was getting into, it was very difficult for them to understand like why I would want to be a professional drug dealer. But they had some idea because I've been designing and creating vaporizers since 1997. So in college, I was already like tinkering around and trying to build vaporizers, and actually how I paid for partially my college tuition was designing box vaporizers and selling them to my colleagues. And so, like many opportunistic immigrant parents, when they realized that there was money to be made, they were like, okay, I think there might be some legs here. And my father does traditional Chinese medicine. So as I started educating him on the plant, or more importantly, when he saw Dr. Sanjay Gupta validate what I was telling him, all of a sudden he was like, okay, this is my son. He knows what he's talking about. But it required someone like Dr. Sanjay Gupta to convince him, another doctor, to basically say the same things I was telling him, to really open up his mind that I wasn't a professional drug dealer, but I was actually creating devices that would allow people to get the medicine that they required without the downsides of, tar and carcinogens that happen in the combustion process.
And it's a story that is not uncommon, I think, for Asian American professionals who make this pivot. And what you had on your side was the fact that your father, coming from the medical community, had kind of like that North Star to focus on and say, oh, okay, now I get it. I heard Sanjay Gupta say it, and now it makes sense to why my son wants to do this. And as we, talk about a lot in our community building, the Asian American population inside or outside of cannabis is very diverse, depending on what background your family is from and what situation they're coming from. It will absolutely affect the way that they react to the news of, oh, my son or daughter is now going to work in cannabis. And at least from my experience, we're Filipino American, and while neither of my parents come from the medical community, there is a certain level of like also propriety that ranks very high on their value system. And that, I think, was the biggest thing to overcome. Still working on it. I haven't overcome it yet. And I know that there's a lot of people who are, colleagues of ours who are kind of battling the same things, but it's it's very special, I think, to have folks like you and I, and the folks that we've met through our networking, to support each other and to be able to talk about and share these experiences, so you don't feel alone, and so you don't feel like you have to go at it on your own and without the insight of others. This month has been so special, I think, because we're seeing a lot of these platforms being used for us to support each other, this included. So anyway, not to go off on a tangent, but I just want you to know that the work that you're doing, it's so important and it's so appreciated. And I just want to be able to support you any way I can, because it's something that we can all benefit from, no matter where your parents come from.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit of color to that is, I kind of fast forward a lot of the story where I said, once they realized there was money to be made, everyone was okay with it. But the truth of it was, I did a lot of like really trying to convince everyone, give them all this information, and get really frustrated with the fact that, they seem to be so close-minded to it. And what I realized was I had to switch my mentality to, instead of like trying to convince them, it was really an opportunity to educate them and open them up. And so a lot of what I ended up doing wasn't like to browbeat them with like more information, but it was to have them feel like when they were telling me their point of view, to really see them, to really hear them, and to really acknowledge like they're telling me this from not because like they're just ignorant idiots, but they're telling me this because they really believe that me not going into the cannabis industry, me staying in tech would be best for myself and my family. So I could see that they were coming from a beautiful place. And once I was able to make them feel like they were seen and heard, they became much more open to seeing and hearing what I had to communicate back. And this isn't just like, for cannabis. I mean, like this is how I feel about, the secret to like my marriage or every other relationship that I have is giving people my 100% focus and attention, making sure like they know that I'm not like answering emails or looking at text messages. I'm really hearing them. And I believe that when people feel heard and understood, even if you don't agree with them, they're much more inclined to be okay with that. But if they don't feel seen and heard, then, they're gonna try to keep being seen and heard and maybe communicate in ways that aren't in alignment with the way they would normally like to present themselves.
It's almost like reactive as opposed to, speaking in a way that is mindful. And mindfulness, I know, is something that you talk about a lot. And it's something that I think most people in the cannabis community also really resonate with. For when at FlowerHire, one of our big campaigns this season is That's My Why, right? So we've been talking to many different executives about why they got into the industry. And of course, everyone has different reasons, whether it's, based on wellness, whether it's a personal connection to the plant, whether it is about social justice. There's millions of beautiful reasons for people to do this work. But one of the themes that we see repeated again and again is this idea of being present and being mindful in the work that you're doing. And some people find that, through the benefits of the plant itself. So in your work, I know that you mentioned that there are some plant-based therapies that you incorporate. Are you able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. For many people, they want to be able to quiet the noise in their head. They talk about when they're off of work, it's very difficult to not think about, the emails that they haven't responded to or the deadlines or whatever is going on in their day job. And so I always recommend meditation as one of the most powerful ways to rewire your neural pathways. But so many people have difficulties just sitting down and giving themselves space. So I love to help them utilize cannabis, conscious cannabis consumption as a way to just settle down the nervous system. I like to think of it as like training wheels. Obviously, once you understand how to ride a bike, you take the training wheels off. But if you don't know how to ride a bike, it could be scary because you think you can fall. So the same thing with cannabis or with meditation is if it's hard for you to drop into that meditative state and experience what it's like to connect with something greater than yourself through meditation, then it just feels like you're wasting your time. You're just sitting there wasting your time. Maybe you're doing a guided meditation and you're like, okay, this guy's saying visualize this or that. And so I found that when you consume a little cannabis with the right intention before meditation, you give yourself permission to not have to think about work, think about the laundry list of things that maybe your significant other wants you to do before you come home, and just give yourself that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes to be with yourself. And to me, the secret of life is to know thyself. If you do not know thyself, then you will not be able to make the decisions that will be commiserate with what you truly want on like a spiritual or soul level. And the spiritual or soul level, it doesn't have to be metaphysical, just talking about what your true authentic self truly wants to do. And when you are able to know what you truly want to do, then every day is a beautiful day because you get an opportunity to be in alignment with what you want. And instead of being happy when you hit a goal or when you hit the quarterly revenue or when your company finally has an exit, is that you enjoy the journey because, is it the journey or the destination? Well, it's never the destination. Life is just one long journey. The destinations are just made up illusions in your head of like, this is what is going to make me feel good. This is what's going to release more oxytocin or dopamine or serotonin in my body. And the truth of it is that if you, if your happiness is conditional on something happening, then you will always be chasing your happiness. But if your happiness is conditional on you deciding that you want to be happy, then the world starts rearranging itself in a way that is commiserate to how you're showing up for yourself internally.
That was so refreshing to hear because I feel like, again, one of the reasons a lot of people come to cannabis, me included, was, to find a place where you could reconcile your work with your personal desires, and in after 3.5 years in cannabis, one of my favorite things about this work is that when I come to work, I can bring my full self. I can be who I am and I can express who I am and just be completely at home with my colleagues and my partners because I think that is something that's in alignment. We accept everyone. It doesn't matter if you came from finance. It doesn't matter if you came from working at 7-Eleven. The cannabis industry will accept you because we're all here for the same thing. And I thank you for bringing that to the light because it's something that is important to me. And, as we kind of come up on our time here, and I know we could keep talking about this forever. And for those of you who are interested, of course, in hearing more, I'm going to put all the information about how to contact Seibo and learn more about his work in the content below. But, let's look toward the future. As we are now embarking on the next year of cannabis coming up soon, what do you see happening? I know that's a big question, but whether it is in terms of the landscape of the products that you and other people like you are putting out there, if it is the face of the workforce, what are your wishes and predictions for the cannabis industry moving forward?
Yeah, my wish and my prediction, I hope is one and the same, which is I believe that we will all begin to realize, just like you said, how grateful we are to be able to build an industry like this. And for me, this isn't a prediction, but this is the way that I navigate as well as what I teach my clients, and not just my clients, but how I interact with my coworkers is to really look at every challenge not as a problem, but every challenge as a gift of expansion, whether it's professional expansion, personal expansion, spiritual expansion, or expansion of our industry. And for every challenge that we have, for every legislator that is going against us, for every bank that won't give us, the financing or the ability to process credit cards. These are all ways for us to be the hero in our own movie. And I very much love the hero's journey archetype as a way to navigate life because if you truly see that your toughest challenges are your greatest gifts, you will start understanding that every day that you have a challenge, it's not there to have you mentally or physically suffer. That challenge is there to help you grow. And if we can all adopt that framework or that ideology, then I believe that we will all have a much better time growing and guiding this industry into what I believe it can be, which is a way for people to have more independence and sovereignty over their own consciousness by utilizing these plants. And, my prediction is that when I talked about these things a few years ago, people just said that's the stupidest stuff ever. And now when I talk about this stuff, people are like, yeah, like I want to believe it. I don't know if I actually believe it. So I could see that people are becoming more open to this possibility that the cannabis industry can be everything that we thought it could be. And it's just going to take some more heavy lifting from everyone who is listening to this. And I hope that by listening to this, it puts you into a higher state of being. So instead of feeling like, oh, today I just have so many problems to work on, you go, yes, today I have so many problems to work
So
on. I'm
many
going to be so much better
opportunities.
from it. Yeah.
It's I hope the same too. That is my wish and my prediction for the industry as well. I hope that as many people as possible get to see this segment and hear even a sliver of, the wisdom that you're putting out there, because I think that it'll resonate with many people, not only because of the place in history we are with the industry, also people, after coming out of the pandemic and kind of having to reckon with their values and family life and all that. It's wonderful timing as humans what we're going through. And again, thank you so much for spending time with us, Seibo. This is definitely not the last time we're going to talk. And again, I'm going to make sure everyone is able to get additional information if they choose so. And everyone, to those of you who have joined us today, thank you so much. I'm Aisha from FlowerHire. You can find us at flowerhire.com. If you are looking to build a team or join a team, give me a call. We will be here for you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I could add one last thing, Aisha, you are a beautiful person inside and out. Flower Hire is very lucky to have you on the team. I have met many members of the Flower Hire team. You guys are great. So if you guys are looking to crack into the cannabis industry, please look at Flower Hire. And thank you so much for allowing me to share my thoughts on this show. And I look forward to whenever we have another opportunity to co-create some more information for people to digest.
Let's go. And thank you so much for the kind words. Bye, everyone.